Have you noticed that your data finishes faster these days? You buy 1,000 naira worth of data, scroll through Instagram, reply to a few messages, maybe watch a couple of TikTok videos, and by the next day, you're out. To make matters worse, data has become even more expensive. So you wonder, something is not adding up. But what if I told you that this problem is much bigger than just fast-running data? While everyone is trying to stretch their subscriptions, Nigeria is actually losing internet users. In the first half of 2025, more than 1 million residents went offline. And this is happening at a time when the rest of the world is building digital economies, harnessing artificial intelligence, and relying more on the internet for everything, from work and school to business. But in Nigeria, the numbers are going down. Interestingly, this decline seems not to be affecting telecommunication companies. In fact, their revenues have risen sharply in the past year. So what's really going on? Why are fewer people online in a country that prides itself as Africa's tech giant? Let's break this down. The most obvious reason is money. Getting online in Nigeria has become quite expensive. In January 2025, the Nigerian Communications Commission's NCC approved a 40% tariff hike across the telecom sector. Overnight, the cost of 1 gigabyte of data rose from around 287 naira to 431 naira. That means if 1,000 naira once got you 3.5 gigabyte, it now barely buys 2.3 gigabytes. Not long after this hike, the number of internet users began to drop. By June, barely 6 months later, it dropped by 1 million. That's 1 million students, business owners, and job seekers disconnected from the digital world. At the same time, inflation is hovering around 40% and the naira has lost much of its value. With the prices of food, housing, and fuel all rising, many have been forced to cut back. The result is that families start prioritizing essentials over internet subscriptions because when you no longer have disposable income, data becomes a luxury. But that's only part of the story. Even if you can afford data, you still need a phone capable of using it. And smartphones, especially entry-level models, have become more expensive these days. Devices that sold for around 50,000 naira in 2023 now cost nearly 3 times as much. A GSMA report shows that around 30 million Nigerians live in areas with mobile broadband coverage, but still don't use the internet. In cities, about 73% of adults own an internet-enabled phone, but in rural areas, only 39% do. Affordability remains the biggest issue. A basic smartphone now costs more than the national minimum wage. Popular entry-level brands like Itel and Infinix, which sold for about 120,000 to 180,000 at the start of the year, now go for 200,000 and 220,000 naira. This price rise all ties back to inflation. Since most phones are imported, a weaker naira makes imports costlier, and as a result, brands raise prices to stay afloat, while consumers are left struggling to keep up. Then there's the complaint you hear everywhere. My data doesn't last anymore. It's true, but telcos are not stealing data, though that's what a lot of people believe. So 2 main factors are at play. First, the price hikes mean now you get less data for the same money. Second, apps consume far more data than they used to. 5 years ago, Instagram stories were mostly text and low-resolution images. Now they are full HD videos, autoplay reels and sponsored ads, TikTok, YouTube shorts, video calls, and automatic cloud backups. Your phone is constantly sending and receiving data even when you're not actively using it. So yes, your data might finish faster, but it's mostly because it's structural, not just corporate greed. It's a mix of inflation, technology evolution, and poor regulation around transparency. And that's where trust breaks down. When users can't understand why their data disappears, they lose confidence in telecom companies, and sometimes they just stop buying altogether. All of these point to a widening digital divide. Every person who goes offline means one less person with access to online education, e-commerce, remote work, or digital banking. Globally, that gap matters more than ever. The internet has become essential in the world we live in today. AI tools, remote jobs, telemedicine, and e-learning platforms all rely on a stable internet. The Nigerian government recognizes this. In 2020, it launched the National Broadband Plan, promising 70% broadband penetration by 2025, but by January this year, it had only achieved about 45%. If internet access becomes a privilege instead of a basic utility, millions of Nigerians will be locked out of the future economy. That means fewer tech startups, fewer online jobs, and slower innovation. It also means inequality because the people who can afford to stay online will keep advancing, while those who can't will fall further behind. So, if Nigeria is to compete in a digital world that is already innovating faster than ever, what has to change? 1. Increase transparency. Telecoms should show detailed breakdowns of how data is used, billed, and taxed. 2. Increase affordability. This doesn't necessarily have to be blanket subsidies, but targeted relief for low-income users, students can help. 3. Strengthen infrastructure. Better fiber coverage, rural broadband projects, and energy solutions that cut telecom costs. Data access isn't a luxury anymore. 1 million people going offline may seem insignificant in a country of about 200 million people. But it's not about the number. It's about the pattern of decline and what it means for the people and the digital economy of Nigeria.